I was sorting through the mail on a Tuesday afternoon when I found the envelope. Thick, glossy, the kind that comes from expensive travel agencies with embossed logos. It wasn't addressed to me. Nothing in this house ever was. But curiosity made me slide my finger under the seal anyway, and what I found inside made my stomach drop like a stone through ice water. 5 plane tickets to Hawaii, 5 passports clipped together with a silver paperclip. Mom's burgundy passport worn at the edges, Dad's navy one that looked newer, my brother Owen's with a coffee stain on the corner, my sister Vanessa's that still looked fresh from the post office, and my grandmother's, pale blue and ancient. I counted again, slower this time, like maybe I'd missed one tucked behind the others. But no, 4 family members plus Grandma Helen. The trip was scheduled for 2 weeks from now, departing on a Thursday morning. Nobody had mentioned it. Not once. Not at dinner, not in passing, not even a hint. I stood there in our kitchen in Buffalo, New York, the afternoon sunlight streaming through the window over the sink, holding physical proof that my own mother had planned an entire vacation and deliberately left me out. My hands started shaking, the papers rustled, and something inside me that had been bending for years finally snapped clean in half. My name is Cameron Wells. I'm 23 years old. I've been the invisible child in my family for as long as I can remember. Owen is 26, the golden son, the one who can do absolutely no wrong in Mom's eyes. He's tall, confident, works in sales, and has that easy charm that makes people trust him even when they shouldn't. Vanessa's 19, still in college at the State University, still treated like a delicate princess who deserves the world handed to her on a silver platter. She's got Mom's dark hair and Dad's green eyes, and she's never had to work for anything in her entire life. Then there's me, stuck in the middle like an unwanted bookmark, the one who pays half the bills in this house but gets none of the respect or recognition. I work as a dental hygienist at a clinic on Elmwood Avenue near the Art District. The pay is decent, better than decent actually. Good enough that when Dad lost his job at the manufacturing plant 2 years ago, I stepped up without being asked, without even hesitating. I covered the mortgage 3 different times when they came up short. I paid for Vanessa's sorority fees last semester when Dad said they couldn't afford it. I even fixed the roof last winter when it started leaking brown water over the dining room table during that ice storm. And this was my thanks. This was what I got for being reliable. I put the tickets back in the envelope carefully, smoothing the edges, and set it on the counter exactly where I'd found it, tucked between a utility bill and a furniture catalog. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to grip the edge of the counter to steady myself. But I kept my face completely blank. I'd learned that skill early in this house, how to hide what I felt so nobody could see it, so nobody could use my emotions against me or mock me for being too sensitive. When Mom came home an hour later, grocery bags hanging from both arms, she walked right past me without a word, humming some cheerful tune I didn't recognize, her purse swinging from her shoulder. She didn't even glance at the counter where the envelope sat like a ticking bomb. I waited. I helped her put away groceries in silence. Dinner came and went. Baked chicken, white rice, green beans from a can. She served everyone, asking Owen about his new car lease, asking Vanessa about her upcoming finals, complaining about traffic on the way to the store. She didn't ask me anything. She didn't look at me once during the entire meal. I ate in silence, watching her laugh at Owen's stupid jokes about his coworkers, watching Dad nod along absently like he always did, watching Vanessa scroll through her phone between bites without anyone telling her to put it away. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with something I couldn't quite name yet. Hurt, anger, betrayal, all of it, maybe, mixed together into something heavy and suffocating. I thought about all the times I'd been left out before, all the small cruelties I'd convinced myself didn't matter. The family photos where I was always cropped to the very edge of the frame, half my face cut off. The birthday dinners where my cake was clearly an afterthought, bought from the clearance rack at the grocery store, while Vanessa got custom orders from the fancy bakery downtown. The conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered a room, everyone suddenly going quiet and looking anywhere but at me. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't blind. I knew I wasn't wanted the way Owen and Vanessa were. I'd known it for years, but I'd told myself it was just the way things were, that I was being too sensitive, that family was family, and you had to accept them as they were. But this felt different. This wasn't a small slight or a moment of favoritism. This was deliberate, calculated, cold. They'd sat down together, probably at this very dining room table, and planned an entire week-long vacation to Hawaii. They'd researched resorts, they'd picked dates, they'd booked flights and hotels, and at every single step of that process, they decided I didn't deserve to be included. The next morning, I started looking into their finances. I know that sounds extreme, like something a crazy person would do, but hear me out. I'd been paying bills for this household for 2 solid years. I had access to the joint account Dad had set up specifically for household expenses, with my name on it so I could make transfers when needed. I knew all the passwords because I'd been the one managing everything. I knew the statements, the payment schedules, the due dates. So I logged in on my laptop, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold beside me, and what I found made everything click into place like a puzzle I'd been trying to solve for years. Mom had pulled $8,000 from their savings account 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. The travel agency charge was right there in the transaction history. 5 tickets at $1,400 each, plus resort fees and travel insurance. $7,000 total, charged to a card I'd helped them pay off last year. They'd spent money I'd given them with money that was supposed to keep this family afloat on a vacation without me. I sat back in the wooden chair, my coffee going cold in my hand, condensation forming on the outside of the mug. That was the exact moment I stopped feeling guilty about what I was going to do next. That was the moment Cameron the doormat died and someone new was born. I didn't confront them. Not yet. That would have been stupid, impulsive, the kind of thing that would let them twist the narrative and make me look like the unreasonable one. Instead, I did what I do best. I got quiet and I got strategic. First, I opened my own bank account at a completely different branch across town, a small credit union where nobody knew my family. Then I called my boss, Dr. Holloway, and asked if the clinic needed anyone for extra weekend shifts. She said yes immediately, sounding almost relieved. She'd been trying to expand their Saturday hours for months, but couldn't find reliable staff. I took every single shift she offered without hesitation. I worked mornings, evenings, Saturdays, even picked up hours on Sundays when the emergency clinic needed coverage. I smiled at patients all day long, cleaned teeth until my hands ached, took x-rays, explained proper flossing techniques, and saved every single dollar I earned. At home, I played the role they expected perfectly. I was polite, I was helpful. I made dinners when asked and did laundry without complaining and asked absolutely no questions about anything. Mom seemed relieved by my behavior. She probably thought I hadn't noticed the tickets at all. She probably thought I was too stupid or too beaten down to pay attention anymore. She had no idea what was coming. 2 days before the trip, Mom finally told me. We were in the living room on a Sunday afternoon. She was packing a large suitcase, folding sundresses and sandals and swimsuits, laying them in neat rows. The TV was on in the background, some home improvement show neither of us was watching. She looked up from a pile of shorts and said, almost casually, like she was mentioning she'd bought milk, "Oh, Cameron, I meant to tell you earlier. We're going to Hawaii for a week, leaving Thursday morning." Her tone was so casual it actually made my stomach hurt. I looked up from my book, a mystery novel I'd been pretending to read for the last 20 minutes. "All of you?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, curious but not accusatory. She nodded, still not quite meeting my eyes, focusing on folding a white linen shirt. "It's a family thing. Grandma Helen really wanted to go before she gets too old to travel, and we thought it would be nice to do something special together." I paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. "And I'm not invited?" I asked quietly. She sighed like I was being difficult on purpose, like I was a child asking why I couldn't have candy for dinner. "There wasn't enough room, sweetheart. The resort had limited availability. Maybe next time." Next time. The lie sat between us like a physical object, heavy and ugly. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice or demand explanations. I just nodded slowly and went back to my book, eyes scanning the same sentence over and over without comprehending a single word. I could feel her watching me from across the room, waiting for me to break down or beg or make some kind of scene that would let her feel justified in excluding me. When I didn't give her that satisfaction, she seemed almost disappointed. She finished packing in silence and left the room, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. That night at dinner, Owen made a joke about bringing me back a souvenir, maybe a tacky shot glass or a plastic hula dancer for my desk. Vanessa laughed and said maybe a keychain with a palm tree on it. Dad stayed quiet the entire time, cutting his steak into smaller and smaller pieces, his jaw working like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I smiled and said that would be nice, that I appreciated them thinking of me. Inside, I was counting down hours. They had absolutely no idea what was coming. After dinner, I went to my room and made a list on a yellow legal pad. Everything I needed to do, every payment I needed to stop, every connection I needed to sever. It was time to start moving all the pieces into place. It was time to become invisible in a way that would hurt them. The morning they left, I woke up early and made them breakfast. Pancakes from scratch, scrambled eggs with cheese, fresh coffee in the pot. Mom looked genuinely surprised but pleased when she came downstairs and saw the spread on the dining room table. "This is so sweet, Cameron," she said, like I was a child who'd done a chore without being asked, like I was a dog who'd finally learned a trick. I watched them eat. I watched them laugh and talk about snorkeling and luau's and what they'd do on the beach. I watched them load suitcases into the car, Owen's expensive leather bags, Vanessa's bright pink rolling case, Grandma Helen moving slowly with her cane. I stood on the front porch in my bathrobe and waved as they pulled away, Owen driving his new leased BMW, Vanessa in the passenger seat already scrolling through her phone. The car disappeared around the corner at the stop sign, and I went back inside. The house was completely silent, utterly, perfectly silent. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe. I walked into the kitchen and opened my laptop on the table. The screen glowed in the morning light. It was time to execute the plan. It was time to show them what it felt like to be left behind. First, I stopped the automatic payment I'd been making toward the mortgage through my checking account. That was $1,200 a month they'd been taking for granted. Money I'd been paying without complaint for almost 2 years straight. Then I canceled the payment for Vanessa's sorority dues, another $300 a semester that I'd been covering because it's important for her networking. I called the insurance company and removed myself as the co-payer on the family car policy, which saved me another $250 a month. In under an hour, sitting at that kitchen table with my coffee and my laptop, I'd cut off nearly $2,000 in monthly payments they'd been depending on without ever once saying thank you. But I didn't stop there. That would have been too easy. I transferred every single dollar from the joint household account into my new private account at the credit union. $6,000, accumulated from my paychecks over months, gone in seconds with a few clicks. I left exactly $10 behind in the account, just enough that it wouldn't close automatically, just enough that they'd see it and understand this was intentional. Then I sat back in the wooden chair and waited for them to notice what I'd done. By day 3 of their vacation, my phone started ringing. I ignored every single call. Text messages piled up in my notifications, first from Mom, then from Dad, then from Owen, who probably didn't even care but was being asked to reach out. They were cheerful at first. Photos of white sand beaches, messages like, "Wish you were here," with smiley face emojis and heart emojis. I didn't respond to any of them. By day 4, the tone shifted dramatically. "Cameron, call me when you get this. It's important. Cameron, we need to talk about something. Why aren't you answering your phone?" I let them sit in the silence I'd lived in for years, the same silence where my opinions didn't matter and my feelings weren't worth discussing. On day 5, Mom called 16 times in a row. I finally picked up on the 17th call, curious what she'd say. Her voice was tight, brittle, barely controlled. "Cameron, what's going on? The mortgage payment didn't go through, and when I checked the household account, it's empty. There's only $10 in there. I kept my voice calm, pleasant even, like we were discussing the weather. I moved my money, Mom. I figured since I wasn't family enough to go on vacation, I wasn't family enough to pay your bills either. There was dead silence on the other end of the line. I could hear ocean waves in the background, someone laughing far away, tropical birds calling. Then she tried to recover, her voice shifting into that false sweetness she used when she wanted something from me. Honey, you're overreacting. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings. It was just a space issue. I laughed. It surprised both of us. It was sharp and bitter and completely genuine. You spent my mortgage money on plane tickets, Mom. You planned an entire vacation and left me behind like I was nothing, like I was garbage you could just throw away. So now you can figure it out the same way I've had to figure things out my whole life. She started to argue, her voice rising into that sharp tone that usually made me back down, but I hung up before she could finish her sentence. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, calm. I blocked her number immediately. Then I blocked Dad's number, then Owen's, then Vanessa's, then even Grandma Helen's, though that one hurt a little because she'd always been kind to me in her own quiet way. For the first time in my entire life, I felt powerful instead of powerless. They'd made me invisible for years, and now I was using that invisibility as a weapon against them. While they were still stuck in Hawaii trying to figure out what happened, I started packing my belongings. I didn't have much: clothes that fit in 3 suitcases, books that filled 2 boxes, my laptop and charger, a few personal things like photos from high school and my dental hygienist certificate. I'd been living in that house for 23 years, my entire life, and everything I owned fit into 4 cardboard boxes and 3 suitcases. That told me everything I needed to know about my place in that family. I found an apartment on the north side of Buffalo, a small 1-bedroom above a used bookstore that smelled like old paper and coffee. The landlord, Mr. Novak, was an older man in his 60s with kind gray eyes and a thick Polish accent who didn't ask too many questions when I showed up with cash for first and last month's rent. I paid him in $100 bills counted out on his desk. I moved in that same weekend, carrying boxes up the narrow stairs, and I didn't leave a forwarding address with anyone. I changed my phone number at the cell store. I deleted every single one of my social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. I disappeared as completely as someone can disappear in the modern world. Let them come home to an empty room and a note on the pillow. The note was simple. I left it on the kitchen counter, right where I'd found those plane tickets, held down by the salt shaker so it wouldn't blow away. It said, "You taught me I wasn't part of this family. I finally listened. Don't contact me. Don't look for me. I'm done paying for people who don't value me, Cameron." I didn't sign it with love. I didn't add any explanation. I didn't need to. When they got home 3 days later, their tans already fading, I was already completely gone from their lives. I know because Vanessa posted about it online before she apparently deleted her account. She'd written something like, "Family emergency, please pray for us," which almost made me laugh out loud when a former coworker showed me the screenshot. The emergency was that their ATM machine had finally run dry. The emergency was that the person they'd been using had finally woken up. Owen tried calling from a different number, probably borrowed from a friend. I didn't answer. Mom showed up at the dental clinic 2 weeks later, but Dr. Holloway, bless her, told her I'd transferred to a different location across town. I hadn't transferred anywhere. I just asked her to lie, and she'd agreed without hesitation because she'd seen the way my hands shook whenever my family called. For 2 months, I lived quietly in my new apartment above the bookstore. I worked my shifts at the clinic, came home to my small, clean space, cooked simple meals for one, and slept without the constant weight of resentment pressing down on my chest like a physical object. It was the most peace I'd ever known in my entire life. But peace doesn't mean forgiveness. Peace doesn't mean I'd forgotten. I still wanted them to understand exactly what they'd done. Wanted the truth to exist somewhere besides just inside my own head. So I started gathering evidence systematically. I pulled bank statements going back 2 full years, showing every single payment I'd made. I printed emails where Mom had asked me to cover bills just this once that turned into dozens of times. I saved text messages where Dad thanked me for helping out, but never once acknowledged I'd literally kept them from losing the house to foreclosure. I collected pay stubs, receipts, transfer confirmations, everything. I built a file 2 inches thick, organized with tabs and dates. Then I made copies at the print shop downtown, and I mailed them to everyone who'd ever told me I was being too sensitive. I sent the first copy to Grandma Helen. She'd always liked me, or at least I thought she had, though clearly not enough to question why I wasn't on the trip. In the envelope, I included a letter explaining everything: the exclusion, the money I'd paid, the lies Mom had told. I sent a copy to my Aunt Diane, Mom's younger sister, who'd always acted like Mom was some kind of saint who could do no wrong. I sent one to Owen's girlfriend, Paige, who'd been around the family long enough to see how they treated me but had never said anything. And I sent one to the family lawyer, Mr. Brennan, who'd helped set up that joint account in the first place and had witnessed my signature on the paperwork. I wasn't trying to destroy them, not really. I was trying to make sure the truth existed somewhere outside my own head, that someone else would know I hadn't been crazy or ungrateful or selfish like they'd probably been telling everyone. I was creating a record. I was making sure that if they tried to spin this as me being the problem, there would be evidence to the contrary. The fallout was immediate and more dramatic than I'd expected. Grandma Helen called me from a number I didn't recognize 2 days after receiving the package. I answered because I was curious what she'd say. Her voice was shaking, but not with anger, with shame. "Cameron, sweetheart, I didn't know any of this," she said, her Polish accent thicker when she was upset. "I asked your mother 3 times why you weren't coming on the trip, and she told me you had to work. She said you couldn't get time off from the clinic and that you'd been so busy lately. She made it sound like it was your choice." I closed my eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter in my apartment. Of course Mom had lied. Of course she'd made herself look good. "I wouldn't have gone if I'd known the truth," Grandma continued, her voice breaking. "I wouldn't have let them do this to you. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so ashamed." I told her it wasn't her fault, and I genuinely meant it. She was 76 years old, trusting her daughter to do the right thing. How could she have known? But I also told her I needed space from everyone in that family, including her. She understood, though I could hear her crying softly before we hung up. Aunt Diane was a completely different story. She called Mom immediately after reading the documents, and apparently they had a screaming match over the phone that ended with Diane refusing to host Thanksgiving that year at her house like she'd done for the past 15 years. According to a cousin who reached out to me later, Diane told Mom she was ashamed to be related to her. Paige, Owen's girlfriend, broke up with him 2 weeks after receiving her package. She told him through a mutual friend that she couldn't be with someone who treated family the way he'd treated me, who'd stood by and watched his sister be exploited without saying a single word. Owen tried to say he didn't know it was that bad, that he thought I was fine with helping out. But Paige didn't buy it, and nobody else did either. The truth was out now, documented and undeniable, and it was ugly. Mom tried to do damage control, posting vague things online about misunderstandings and difficult times and praying for family healing. But people weren't stupid. When you abandon your own daughter and then get caught with evidence, no amount of spin makes you look good. I watched it all from a distance, through mutual friends and former coworkers who kept me updated. I didn't feel guilty about any of it. I felt free. 3 months after I left, Dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. I still don't know how he found me. Maybe Mr. Novak told him, or maybe he hired someone to track me down. But there he was on a cold November evening, standing in the narrow hallway outside my door, looking older than I remembered seeing him. His hair had more gray in it. His shoulders slumped forward like he was carrying something impossibly heavy. The bags under his eyes were darker. I didn't invite him in. We stood there in the hallway, the smell of old books and coffee drifting up from the store below, closed for the evening. "Cameron," he said quietly, his voice hoarse, "I need to talk to you, please." I crossed my arms over my chest, standing in my doorway. So talk, I said flatly. He sighed, a long, tired sound. Your mother made a terrible mistake. We all did. But you're still our daughter. You're still family. This has gone on long enough. I laughed, and it came out bitter and sharp, echoing in the narrow hallway. I stopped being family when you left me behind, Dad. I stopped being your daughter when you let her spend my money on a vacation without me. He tried to argue, tried to say it wasn't like that things had been complicated, that money was tight and they'd made a bad decision under stress. I stopped him by holding up my hand. Dad, you spent $7,000 on a vacation. 7,000. You had money, you just didn't want to spend it on me. You wanted to spend it on everyone else. He looked down at the worn carpet in the hallway, unable to meet my eyes. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Then he said something I genuinely didn't expect. You're right. I blinked, caught off guard. He looked up, and his eyes were red around the edges, watery. You're right about everything, and I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you years ago. I should have said something when your mother started treating you like you were less important than Owen and Vanessa. I didn't, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I was a coward. I chose the easy path, and you paid the price. It was the first real apology I'd ever gotten from him in 23 years. It didn't fix anything that was broken. It didn't undo the damage. But it mattered. It mattered that he could finally see it. I told him I needed more time, maybe a lot of time. He nodded, wiped his eyes, and left without another word. 6 months passed like water. I built a life that was entirely mine, that belonged to nobody else. I got promoted at work to lead hygienist, which came with a substantial raise and more responsibility. Dr. Holloway told me I was the most reliable employee she'd ever had. I started taking night classes at the community college, studying business management because I wanted to open my own dental practice someday. I wanted to build something that was completely mine. I made new friends, people who didn't know my family, who didn't know my history, who saw me for exactly who I was instead of who I'd been forced to be. I went on dates with a guy named Alex who worked at the bookstore downstairs. I traveled to Boston for a long weekend just because I could, just because I wanted to see the ocean. I learned what it felt like to make decisions without guilt crushing me, without the constant weight of obligation pressing down on every single choice. I was happy, genuinely, surprisingly, completely happy, and my family had absolutely no part in it whatsoever. Then, one afternoon in early spring, when the snow was finally melting, Vanessa showed up at the bookstore. I was browsing the fiction section after work when I saw her through the window, standing on the sidewalk, hesitating. She looked different, thinner, older somehow, less sure of herself. Her dark hair was pulled back messily. She wasn't wearing makeup. She stood there for almost 5 minutes before finally coming inside. I walked out from behind a shelf, and we both froze. For a second, neither of us moved or spoke. Then she took a shaky breath. I'm sorry, Cameron. Her voice cracked on my name. I was awful to you. We all were. I didn't realize how bad it was until you left, and I actually had to think about it. I studied her face carefully, looking for the lie, looking for manipulation. But all I saw was genuine regret. Real, painful, uncomfortable regret. She told me she'd started seeing a therapist at school, that she'd been unpacking a lot of things about our family dynamics, that she finally understood I'd been the scapegoat for problems that had nothing to do with me. I didn't forgive her right away, but I agreed to listen. Over the next few months, Vanessa and I started meeting for coffee occasionally. Not often, once every few weeks when I felt emotionally ready. She didn't make excuses for Mom or Owen. She didn't try to convince me to come home or reconcile with everyone. She just showed up consistently, on time, and let me set the pace and the boundaries. That mattered more than I'd expected it to. Slowly, carefully, like building something out of broken pieces, we rebuilt a relationship. It wasn't the relationship we'd had before. It was actually better, because it was honest. She told me things I hadn't known, that Mom had fallen into a depression after I left, that the house felt empty and wrong now, that Owen had moved out after Paige left him and was living with a roommate, that Dad was quieter than ever, barely speaking at meals. I didn't feel sorry for them. I didn't feel the urge to fix their problems. But I didn't feel angry anymore either. I just felt distant, like they were people I used to know a long time ago in a different life. A full year after I left, I received a letter in my mailbox. It was from Mom, handwritten on her cream-colored stationery, 6 pages long, front and back. Her handwriting was shaky in places. She didn't make excuses this time. She didn't try to minimize what happened or shift blame onto me for being too sensitive. She just told the truth, maybe for the first time in years. She admitted she'd always favored Owen because he reminded her of herself when she was young. She admitted she'd resented me for being independent and self-sufficient, for not needing her the way Vanessa needed her. She admitted the Hawaii trip was planned deliberately without me because she didn't think I'd even care enough to be hurt. I was wrong about everything, she wrote in her slanted cursive. I see that now, and it's too late to fix it. I don't expect you to come back. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I finally see you, Cameron. I see you now for who you've always been, and I'm sorry I didn't see you before. I'm sorry I wasted so many years being blind. I read the letter twice, sitting on my couch. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I haven't gone back to that house. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. The truth is, I don't owe them anything anymore. Not my time, not my money, not my forgiveness, not my presence. They taught me I was disposable, and I taught them I wasn't. I taught them that people who are taken for granted eventually walk away and don't come back. I taught them that love without respect is nothing but an empty word. I'm 24 now. I have my own apartment that smells like books and coffee. I have my own life, my own friends, my own future stretching out ahead of me. I don't lie awake anymore wondering why I wasn't enough for them. I know now that I was always enough. More than enough. They just couldn't see it, and that was never my fault to begin with. Some families are born, some are built, and some are left behind when they become toxic. I chose to build my own family from scratch, from friends and chosen relationships and people who actually value me, and I have never once looked back with regret.